My mother drained my trust fund and manipulated everyone around me, but I refused and blocked her. I'm 29 male, and my relationship with my mom has always been strained, to put it lightly. She's the type who's never been wrong in her life. It's like she's allergic to accountability. Growing up, it wasn't so clear to me. After all, that was just mom. But looking back, I can see it for what it really was: manipulation, entitlement, and this constant need to make everything revolve around her. Things took a turn when my dad passed away when I was 10. He was the only stable thing in my life. And after he was gone, my mom changed. I'm not talking about grief. I get that grief makes people do crazy things. This was different. She suddenly acted like the world owed her something because she was left to raise me on her own. But the truth is, she never really raised me. She jumped from one toxic relationship to another, each guy somehow more useless than the last. And through it all, she always made it clear that everything she did was for me, even though it wasn't. My dad had set up a trust fund for me before he died to be released when I turned 25. He didn't want me to struggle through life, which ironically is exactly what I ended up doing because of her. When I was younger, I had no clue how much money was in that fund. And honestly, I didn't think about it much. I knew it was there, but I trusted my mom to manage things until it was time for me to get access. Rookie mistake. Fast forward to when I was 24, just about to finish college. My mom met her third husband, a flashy, older guy who looked like he'd been living off other people's money his whole life. He sweet-talked his way into her life, and she acted like she'd hit the jackpot. But I could see right through him. He didn't care about her. He just wanted someone to foot the bill while he sat on his ass all day. My mom, of course, was blinded by the fantasy she built up in her head. At this point, I was barely scraping by. I was working part-time to pay rent, finishing up my degree, and living in a dingy apartment with secondhand furniture and a pantry full of instant noodles. I didn't mind. I was making it work. But my mom would come over, look around, and act disgusted. "This is how you're living? You should be doing better than this with everything I sacrifice for you." I shrugged it off at the time. I was used to her throwing that sacrifice line around. But then something weird happened. I got a letter from the bank about an account being closed. I didn't even know I had an account with them, so I called to figure it out. That's when I found out she had drained my trust fund. The entire thing. I couldn't breathe for a minute. My dad had left that money for me, for my future, and she had blown it all on her third wedding. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars gone. I called her right away. "Mom, what the hell did you do with my trust fund?" There was this long pause, and then she sighed like I was the one overreacting. "Oh, that? Honey, I used it for something important. You'll understand when you're older." "Important? You spent it on a fucking wedding. That money was for me. For my future. Dad left it for me." She didn't even try to deny it. "I'm your mother. I'm the one who's been there for you your whole life. I deserve to have a nice wedding. Don't be so selfish. It's not like you were using the money." I was speechless. It wasn't just the fact that she'd spent the money. It was the way she acted like it was no big deal. Like I should be thanking her for robbing me blind. I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. 6 months later, surprise, surprise, her third husband left her. Took off without warning. Apparently, he wasn't too keen on sticking around once the money dried up. She was devastated, of course. But instead of owning up to her mistakes, she turned to me. "Can you help me out, honey? I'm in a bit of a bind right now," she said over the phone, her voice sugary sweet. "A bind? You mean you're broke because you blew through all my money and now your husband bailed?" I was shaking with anger. She sniffled like she was about to cry. "You don't understand how hard this has been for me. I thought he loved me. I just need a little help paying the bills until I get back on my feet." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "No, you drained my trust fund for that wedding, and now you want me to bail you out? You've got to be kidding." Her tone switched from pitiful to defensive in a heartbeat. "I'm your mother. I've done everything for you. You owe me. I raised you on my own. Sacrificed so much. The least you can do is help me out." I snapped. "You didn't raise me, Mom. You used me. You used my dad's money. You used my trust fund. And now you want to use me again? No, I don't know you a damn thing. I hung up, and that's when the guilt-tripping texts started pouring in. Long paragraphs about how I was abandoning her in her time of need. How I was just like my father, cold and heartless. She was relentless, so I blocked her number. But she wasn't done, not by a long shot. A few days later, I started getting messages from friends telling me that my mom had reached out to them. She says she's worried about you, that she can't get a hold of you. Everything okay? They'd ask, clearly confused. It was embarrassing. She was trying to make it seem like I was the one with the problem, like I was ignoring her for no reason. I had to explain the whole situation to them, that she'd spent all my money and now she was trying to guilt me into helping her. Thankfully, my friends understood, but didn't stop there. She called my workplace next. My manager pulled me aside one morning, looking concerned. Your mom called the office, said there was some kind of emergency and she couldn't reach you. Is everything all right? I was furious. She had crossed the line by getting my job involved. There's no emergency, I told him, trying to keep my cool. She's just trying to manipulate me because I cut her off. My manager was understanding, but it was still humiliating. I had to go to HR and ask them to put a note in my file to block her number and make sure she couldn't contact me at work again. I thought that would be the end of it, but I was wrong. Next, she tried to get to me through my landlord. I found out she had called him, pretending to be concerned about some unpaid rent that I supposedly hadn't mentioned to her. She was fishing for information, trying to get my landlord to tell her something that would give her more leverage. I had to sit down with my landlord and explain the situation. Thankfully, he was cool about it, but it was exhausting. I had no idea how far she was willing to go. That's when I knew I needed to take more drastic action. I filed a cease and desist order to stop her from contacting anyone associated with me. Friends, family, my job, my landlord. I wanted to cut off every possible route she could take to mess with my life. But that didn't stop her from showing up at my apartment one last time. It was late one evening. I heard a loud knock on the door and checked the peephole. There she was, looking pissed like I had somehow wronged her. I stood there for a second, debating whether to even engage. But I knew it would just turn into another screaming match. So I didn't open the door. Open up. We need to talk. She yelled, pounding her fist on the door like she was entitled to barge into my life whenever she felt like it. I didn't respond. She banged on the door again, and when that didn't work, she switched to her usual manipulation tactics. Honey, I know you're upset, but I'm your mother. I love you. We need each other. You can't just shut me out. Still, I said nothing. I wasn't falling for it. Not this time. Then her tone shifted again, going from fake sweetness to outright venom. You think you're better than me, don't you? You think you're so righteous, cutting me off like this? After everything I've done for you? I used that money for you, for our family. You're just like your father, selfish, ungrateful. I wasn't going to take this anymore. I called the police, and they showed up within minutes. She was still there, pacing back and forth in the hallway, spewing insults through the door. When they asked her to leave, she immediately switched to playing the victim, crying and saying she was just a concerned mother trying to speak to her son. But it didn't matter anymore. I was done with her games. I got a restraining order the next day. But it didn't matter anymore. I was done with her games. I got a restraining order the next day. Sitting in that courtroom was surreal. I watched her try to convince the judge that she was the loving, selfless mother who had been wronged by her ungrateful son. But I had the evidence, the drained trust fund, the phone records, the HR reports, the police incident from when she showed up at my apartment. She tried to pull her usual tricks, tears, guilt, painting herself as the victim. But this time it didn't work. The judge saw through her, and I was granted the restraining order. After that, things went quiet. Really quiet. No more phone calls from random people asking if I was okay. No more surprise visits. She couldn't contact me, couldn't involve my friends or work. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my chest. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for her to pull her next manipulative stunt. There's still a part of me that wonders if she'll ever change, if she'll ever see the damage she's done. But I can't waste my life waiting for that. I've had to learn the hard way that sometimes the best thing you can do, even for family, is to walk away. People will take and take until you have nothing left, and then they'll act like you're the bad guy for standing up for yourself. Now, I'm rebuilding. It hasn't been easy, and I'm still picking up the pieces from everything she took from me. But for the first time, I'm in control of my own life. No more manipulation, no more guilt, just me moving forward. So if you're dealing with someone who thinks they can manipulate and guilt their way through your boundaries, take it from me. You don't owe them anything. Sometimes the best decision you can make is to walk away, even if it's from your own family. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.